Okay, so you want to own a casino. Marble floors stretching in every direction. Chandeliers throwing light across a sea of slot machines that never stop humming, even at 2 in the morning. Cocktail waitresses moving through the crowd like they've done this 1,000 times, because they have. Somewhere behind a locked door, a vault is filling faster than anyone could count it by hand. That's the picture in your head. The house always wins. You just have to own the house. That sounds perfect, until you look at the actual numbers behind the industry. The house does win, mathematically, on almost every game on that floor. And yet a shocking number of casinos still lose money. Some for years at a stretch. Some permanently, until the doors close for good and the neon goes dark. Winning nearly every hand and still losing the business isn't a contradiction. It's the entire lesson hiding inside this industry. And almost nobody outside it understands why. Not every casino is the same business wearing the same lights. There are commercial casinos, licensed and taxed directly by a state, fighting for customers in an open market against other operators down the road. There are tribal casinos, built on sovereign land under an entirely different legal and tax structure, often paying no direct state gaming tax at all, negotiating revenue-sharing agreements instead. There are riverboat and dockside casinos, a strange legacy category born from decades-old laws that only allowed gambling on water, some of which still technically float, even though the engines haven't turned in years. There are integrated resorts, the Las Vegas and Macau model, where the casino floor becomes almost a loss leader, the anchor tenant for hotel towers, convention space, and retail built up around it. And there's the Racino, a racetrack with slot machines bolted on, a hybrid built to keep a dying horse racing industry breathing by letting gaming profits quietly subsidize the purse money. 5 very different businesses, all sharing the same name on the sign out front. One shared question underneath every single one of them. Do you make your money from the games themselves, or from everything you can wrap around them? Before you understand how a casino makes money, you need to understand what it costs, just to be allowed to try. A license alone can be the single largest expense on the entire page, and it buys you nothing you can touch. In competitive commercial markets, casino license fees have run anywhere from $50 million to over $1 billion. New York's downstate licensing process set a minimum bid of $500 million per operator for a small handful of available slots, and that number was simply the floor. Bidders were expected to go higher. That money doesn't build a wall. It doesn't buy a slot machine. It doesn't hire a single dealer. It buys permission, nothing more. And the state can still say no after you've written the check. Then comes construction. A full-scale resort with a hotel tower gaming floor, restaurants and parking structure can cross $1 billion for the largest projects. Even a modest regional casino without a hotel attached routinely costs $200 to $400 million to build. And every owner, every executive, every major investor has to survive a background check deep enough to examine decades of financial history, hunting for any connection, however distant, to organized crime, money laundering, or fraud. Regulators have killed entire deals over business associations the applicants themselves had forgotten existed. A college roommate's failed venture, a distant relative's old company. Fail that check, and the project dies. It doesn't matter how much capital is sitting in the bank. Then there's the equipment. A single high-end slot machine costs between $15,000 and $25,000. A large floor might carry 2,000 to 3,000 of them, which alone is $30 to $75 million, before anything else is considered. Table games need custom layouts, automatic shufflers, chip trays, surveillance-linked card readers. Tens of thousands of dollars per table, across 60 or 100 tables on a serious floor. None of it is optional. None of it is negotiable with regulators, who set the standard and simply expect it met. And behind a wall of one-way glass, somewhere above the gaming floor, a room most guests never think about is running around the clock. Dozens of surveillance officers watch a bank of screens fed by cameras trained on every square inch of that room. Every hand, every chip, every face that walks through the door. It's less a security office than an air traffic control tower for money. Recordings are held for months. Staff work in rotating shifts. Every day the doors are open, forever. A serious surveillance build can cost 8 figures before it ever catches its first cheat. And the casino pays that bill whether anyone ever tries to cheat at all. Here's the part that catches new owners off guard completely. None of the cash sitting in that vault actually belongs to the house the way people assume. Every dollar in there is either owed to a winning gambler somewhere on the floor tonight, or it's sitting there as required reserve, proof that if someone hits a life-changing jackpot, the casino can actually pay it out on the spot. Regulators demand a minimum cash reserve at all times, calculated against total exposure across every table and machine combined. Fall short, and the Gaming Commission can shut you down that same evening. Doors closed, license suspended, regardless of how packed the floor looked the night before. So before a single dollar of profit exists, a meaningful slice of your capital is frozen in place, forever. just standing guard against your own customer's luck. So how does the math actually work in the house's favor? Every game on that floor is built around a fixed mathematical edge, and that edge behaves less like a business strategy and more like gravity. It's always pulling in one direction, quietly, relentlessly, whether anyone at the table notices or not. On roulette, that pull sits around 5.26% on a standard wheel. On blackjack, played with flawless basic strategy, it can shrink below 1%, which is exactly why casinos watch card counters the way airports watch unattended bags. On slot machines, the edge is coded directly into the software, typically returning somewhere between 88 and 96% of every dollar wagered back to players over the long run. The house keeps the rest, 4 to 12% of total handle, hand after hand, spin after spin, day after day, without exception. On any single bet, that edge means almost nothing. It's a coin flip with a slight lean built in, but multiply it across 10,000 hands an hour on a busy floor, and something strange happens. The coin flip disappears, and in its place is something close to a mathematical certainty. This is precisely why a casino doesn't fear one player winning big on a Tuesday night. A single win, however large, is noise. It gets absorbed into the math by Thursday. What it fears is something else entirely. And that's where the real story begins. The house edge is only half of how this industry actually makes its money. The other half runs quietly beneath the surface, in a system almost no player ever fully understands, even while they're standing inside it. It's called the comp system, and it looks like generosity. A free suite, a comp-ed dinner, tickets to the late show, delivered to your room with a handwritten note. It isn't generosity at all. Every serious casino tracks something called theoretical win, a running calculation of exactly how much the house expects to earn off a given player, built from their average bet size, their speed of play, and the hours they spend at the table. A player rated to lose $2,000 over a weekend might receive an $800 suite and a $150 dinner, entirely free. That isn't kindness. It's a discount, engineered down to the dollar, designed to keep that player on the property a little longer, spending a little more, coming back next month instead of driving to the casino down the highway. Every loyalty card handed out at check-in exists for one purpose only: to feed that theoretical win number in real time, hand by hand, spin by spin, visit by visit for years. And then there's everything that isn't gambling at all. In a modern integrated resort, gaming revenue often isn't even the majority of what comes in the door. Hotel rooms, restaurants, retail, nightclubs, convention business, together, these can outweigh the tables entirely. Some of the largest resort operators on Earth pull in less than half their total revenue from gaming. The casino floor is the engine. The hotel, the restaurants, the retail, that's the fuel tank. And it's often bigger than the engine itself. The floor exists to pull people onto the property, the same way an anchor department store pulls shoppers into a mall. And everything built around it quietly runs its own separate profit machine, usually with far fatter margins, because none of it is taxed the way gaming revenue is taxed. So far, this sounds like a business that mathematically cannot lose. Until something goes wrong. The house edge only protects you if your bankroll is large enough to absorb the swings. And if your fixed costs aren't already eating you alive while you wait for the math to play out over the months and years it actually needs. A casino's overhead never sleeps. Staffing a floor that runs 24 hours a day, security, surveillance, marketing, utilities for a building the size of several city blocks. Lit and climate controlled every single hour of every single day, forever, whether the floor is packed or half empty. And unlike almost any other business, a casino's greatest financial danger isn't a slow month. It's a whale. A whale is industry slang for a player betting hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions, in a single visit. Whales are exactly who casinos chase hardest, because over the long run, the house edge guarantees they lose more than they win. But in the short run, a whale can walk away with a single session win large enough to blow a hole straight through a casino's quarterly earnings, a hole that no amount of slot machine traffic fills back in overnight. One professional gambler discovered a subtle manufacturing flaw in a specific brand of playing cards, microscopic imperfections on the backs of the cards that let her read the value of the top card before it was ever dealt. She used it at Baccarat, quietly, methodically, across multiple visits. She walked away with tens of millions of dollars from a single casino before anyone realized what had happened. The casino had done nothing wrong. It had followed every procedure to the letter, run every check it was supposed to run, and it still lost a fortune in a matter of weeks because the entire mathematical model rests on one foundational assumption: that no player can ever gain a genuine edge over the house. For once, someone had, and the model had no answer for it. That's the lesson sitting underneath this entire industry, and it's easy to miss standing on the floor with the lights and the noise. The house edge is a guarantee over millions of trials. It is not a guarantee on any single night, any single month, or any single high roller who happens to get lucky at the wrong moment. A casino can be mathematically destined to profit over the course of a decade. and still be one bad month from a genuine liquidity crisis, if enough whales get hot at the same time. Some of the biggest resort operators on the planet now buy insurance-style hedges just to cap their exposure to a single enormous bet. Because without one, a single lucky night for one wealthy player can quietly erase an entire quarter of earnings, and the shareholders never see it coming until the numbers are already published. Meet Steve Wynn. Across 5 decades, he built and lost fortunes on casino projects that reshaped the entire industry. And he's credited, more than almost anyone else, with reinventing what a casino resort could even be. In the 1990s, he opened a resort that broke completely from the old Vegas formula. Cheap buffets, low ceilings, no natural light, no clocks. Every design choice engineered to trap gamblers on the floor for as long as physically possible. Wynn built something else entirely. Fine art on the walls, real paintings worth tens of millions, luxury retail, destination restaurants that people flew in for on their own merit, with no intention of ever touching a card table. He was betting that a wealthier class of visitor would spend more everywhere else on the property, if the gaming floor felt less like the main event, and more like a footnote to the whole experience. The bet worked spectacularly, and it reshaped how every major operator built resorts afterward, from the Vegas Strip to Macau to Singapore. But the same company was also carrying enormous construction debt, financed on the assumption that occupancy would stay high and tourism would stay steady for years to come. When a downturn hit both at once, occupancy and gaming revenue collapsed in the same quarter, and a highly leveraged operator suddenly struggled to service debt that had been built for boom-year assumptions that no longer held. The lesson isn't that Wynn misjudged the gambling math. He didn't, not for a second. The lesson is that this business sits on top of enormous fixed debt for buildings that only make financial sense at high occupancy. And tourism, unlike a card game, has no house edge protecting it from a bad year. So what does a real year in this business actually look like on paper? Picture a mid-sized regional casino running 2,000 slot machines and 60 table games. Slots alone, at a modest average bet, might generate around $150 million a year in gross gaming revenue. Table games add another $60 million. Total gross gaming revenue, roughly $210 million. A number that sounds enormous, the kind of figure that makes an owner feel untouchable. Now watch how fast it shrinks. State gaming taxes alone can run as high as 40 to 50% of gross gaming revenue in some jurisdictions, versus single digits in others, an enormous variable depending entirely on where the license happens to sit on a map. Take a middle figure, 25%, and $52.5 million vanishes immediately, straight to the state, before the casino has paid for a single light bulb or a single dealer's shift. Payroll for a floor that never closes, dealers, security, surveillance, hospitality staff, easily $60 to $80 million a year for an operation this size. Marketing and the comp system, another $15 to $25 million, most of it spent simply to hold ground against competitors chasing the exact same players, with the exact same free rooms, utilities, maintenance, insurance for a building this size, another $20 million, debt service on the original construction loan, $20 to $25 million a year, depending entirely on what interest rates looked like the day the project was financed, years before the first guest ever walked through the door. Add it all up, and a casino generating $210 million in gross gaming revenue might clear somewhere between $10 and $30 million in actual profit in a strong year. That's a real business, and for the capital and risk involved, a genuinely good outcome. It's also a business where a single percentage point shift in the state tax rate, one soft quarter of regional tourism, or one unusually hot run from a cluster of high rollers can erase most or all of that margin in a single reporting period, with nothing visibly different about how the floor was actually run that month. In the optimistic version of this story, competition stays limited, the tax rate stays reasonable next to neighboring states, and hotel and restaurant revenue stays strong enough to carry the business through any quiet stretch on the floor. Whale exposure is properly hedged, so no single player's lucky night can meaningfully dent the quarter. Under those conditions, a well-run casino becomes one of the more durable, cash-generating businesses in the entire hospitality industry, throwing off tens of millions in profit year after year, because the house edge really does compound with remarkable reliability, as long as the fixed costs around it stay firmly under control. In the realistic version, a new competitor opens 40 minutes down the highway and splits the regional customer base overnight, forcing marketing spend up just to hold territory that used to be uncontested. State legislators, hungry for new revenue of their own, raise the gaming tax rate 5 points in the middle of the fiscal year, with no warning and no room to negotiate. A recession trims discretionary travel spending, and hotel occupancy slides from 85% to 60%, gutting the one revenue stream that was supposed to carry the business through a soft month on the floor. And somewhere in the middle of all that, the high-limit tables hand out 2 unusually large jackpots in the same quarter, Exactly the kind of short-term variance the house edge is built to smooth out over a much longer stretch of time than any single quarter ever allows. None of this is exotic. It's simply the normal risk profile of the business. Under those conditions, that same $210 million operation can slide from a healthy double-digit margin into a single-digit margin or an outright loss, while the marble floors and the chandeliers look exactly the way they did the year before, giving away nothing of what's actually happening underneath. So if you do decide to own a casino, understand what you're actually buying. It was never a business that guarantees you win every hand. It's a business that guarantees you win the average of millions of hands, financed by debt and fixed costs that don't understand averages at all, permanently exposed to a handful of players large enough to turn one very good week for them into one very bad quarter for you. The lights stay on either way. The math only cares in the end.